They blamed me before I even sat down. But digital footprints don't lie, especially when they lead straight into the chief's office at 2:11 a.m. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and stale fear. I was still zipping my jacket when Captain Brunner slammed the printout on the glass table. It made a sound like a slap. She didn't even look at me when she said it, just flung the accusation across the room like it had already been tried and sentenced. You triggered the breach, rookie. Your login is in every log. Every head turned to me. 12 detectives, 3 admin staff, 2 techs, 1 HR rep pretending to take notes, but watching the storm build. No one moved, no one spoke. The silence clung to the walls like damp paint. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I didn't even know what breach she was talking about yet. Brunner finally looked up. Her lipstick was smudged, like she'd wiped her mouth after yelling at someone else before I arrived. She was tired, which made her more dangerous. Her eyes were scanning the room, daring anyone to defend me. No one did. Internal Affairs is already on their way, she added flatly. They've pulled access log 201, time-stamped activity from your account at 0211, remote access, full export of classified materials, confidential ops, staff files, disciplinary records, all of it. 0211. My stomach flipped. I had been asleep in my studio apartment, drooling on a couch cushion and dreaming of finally earning a desk, not plotting a data leak from the chief's own network. I took a breath. Captain, I didn't. You logged in? From your credentials? That's not up for debate. Her tone was icy. Whether you meant to or not is for Internal Affairs to decide. Across the table, Agent Delgado raised an eyebrow, then looked down. He was IA's golden retriever, always wagging his tail behind a clipboard. Today, he didn't look playful. Today, he looked hungry. I scanned the room for a lifeline. Morrison, the guy from cybercrime who once walked me through resetting my 2-factor app. He avoided my eyes. Lara from Records, who shared her charger with me every morning. She stared into her coffee like she was trying to read Morse code in the bubbles. No one moved. No one asked questions. Because they all knew what it meant when Internal Affairs stepped in first. The meeting broke apart like a cracked mirror, everyone standing at once, pretending to read notes, suddenly needing to be anywhere but near me. HR handed me a form. Administrative leave pending investigation, it said at the top, in courier font. Like that made it feel less like exile, less like execution. Back at my desk, I sat down hard. The floor felt like it tilted. Someone had packed up my things already. A cardboard box with my badge, a dying succulent, a stress ball shaped like a brain, and the mug that said, Kroll plus, Alt plus, coffee. I stared at the screen one more time. The login session at 0211 was real. I could see it now. But there were other entries, one that caught my breath, a cross-reference from a secure terminal inside the chief's office. Same time, same access token. Except mine wasn't the only one active. I grabbed my phone, heartbeat in my ears. I didn't call HR. I didn't call the captain. I called Sam, the sysadmin. He picked up on the third ring, groggy. Sam, I need the archived backups, all of them, especially the ones that got rotated before last week. He groaned. That stuff's stored offline, Jules. Cold archive. You need permission. I don't need permission, I said quietly. I need the truth. There was a pause, then a sigh. Meet me by the sub-level printer room in 10. No cameras there. Click. The hallway outside my desk was empty, like the building itself was holding its breath, and I started walking. If they wanted to bury me, they should have picked a better grave. The sub-level printer room hadn't seen daylight or a working toner cartridge since the Bush administration. Flickering fluorescent lights cast stripes across the linoleum floor like prison bars. and the hum of an idle Xerox machine filled the silence with a mechanical heartbeat. Sam was already there, leaning against a forgotten filing cabinet, arms crossed, hoodie up. He looked like someone who hadn't seen the sun in 3 pay cycles. "I thought you were smarter than this," he muttered without looking at me. I closed the door behind me and locked it. Smarter than what? Getting set up? Or asking the one guy who knows how to navigate the digital skeletons around here? He grunted and slid a battered USB-C drive from his pocket. I pulled the backups from the night of the breach, access log 201, access log 200, and the offline rotation logs, including the shadow indexing schedule that only the chief's terminal uses. That stopped me cold. The what? He handed me the drive. There's a separate indexing daemon that only runs on 2 machines, Chief's desktop and Bruner's admin terminal. It timestamps deeper system events that don't show up in the standard logs, like ghost logins, suppressed audit trails, and system overrides. The air in the room thickened. I took the drive like it was nitroglycerin. "Why are you helping me?" I asked, voice lower now. Sam hesitated, then he said, "Because I saw the same timestamp you did. 0211, except the login request bounced twice before it went through. First from a VPN node outside the building, second from the chief's machine. But here's the kicker. The VPN IP is whitelisted, hard-coded into the core firewall. That's not rookie access. That's someone with keys to the entire building." My breath hitched. That meant whoever did this had clearance above mine and knew how to make it look like I was the breach point. A fall girl, neatly packaged for internal affairs. "But the chief," I whispered. "Why would he risk?" Sam cut me off. "Because the data that leaked was curated, not random files, just specific records, HR memos, misconduct investigations, suppressed complaints." He let that sink in. "You think he's cleaning house," I said slowly, "deleting his trail before something explodes." "No," Sam said. "I think someone's trying to burn him before he can." My head swam. Somewhere, above our heads, I could feel the weight of every lie in that building pressing down like concrete. I left Sam with the lights buzzing and took the stairs up, 2 floors to records, where Lara sat behind a frosted window with a nameplate that still had a typo in it. Laura. She hated that. "I need you to do something," I said, sliding the USB across the counter like a poker chip. She looked at me. "Are we about to get fired?" "Probably." She didn't blink. "Give me 10. 10 turned into 20, but when she called me back into the annex room, her face was pale. "There's a file in the archive logs, hidden under an old project directory. Looks like it was meant to be scrubbed." "What is it?" She turned the monitor to face me. It was an audio transcript, internal affairs phone tap, recorded 2 nights before the breach. Voice. 1. "You move this up the chain, and you'll regret it. You're not untouchable." Voice 2. "You don't get to silence people anymore. I've got access log 201 backed up. All of it." Voice 1. "You leak that file, and you'll be the next accidental reassignment." Voice 2. Laughter. "You really think the DA doesn't know already?" My skin crawled. "Who's voice 1?" I asked. Lara zoomed in on the metadata. The terminal ID matched the chief's office, and voice 2 masked, but the redirect header pointed to the DA's own branch line. That's when the pieces began to rearrange themselves. This wasn't just about me or a data breach. It was a digital power play, and I'd stepped on the pressure plate. Suddenly, it didn't matter what I proved. Someone upstairs had already decided who the traitor was supposed to be. But they underestimated one thing. I wasn't alone anymore. And I had proof. You have no idea how deep this rabbit hole goes. And the next chapter is where the bottom starts cracking. Think you've figured out the mole? Don't just watch, investigate with me. Subscribe and let's trace this breach to the end. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of my apartment, lights off, curtains drawn, laptop glowing in the dark like a single witness. The USB drive sat in the port, warm to the touch. I played the same lines over and over again, rewinding the audio logs, scanning metadata, checking hashes. And every time I hit EO211, I felt the same sting. Betrayal. The same login time, the same originating machine, the same terminal ID tied to the chief's office. By morning, the panic had hardened into something colder, sharper, clarity. If the district attorney had already known something, if he'd let me take the fall to force the chief's hand, it meant this wasn't an investigation. It was a setup with moving pieces, and I was just the one naive enough to trigger it early. That morning, I walked into Precinct HQ like a ghost. No badge, no desk, no name on the logs. But I had something better. I had leverage. The Internal Affairs Unit was parked in Conference Room B. Glass walls, brown blinds half drawn, a pair of suits pretending to be bored as they waited for more blood in the water. I didn't knock. I pushed the door open and said only one thing. Your breach log is incomplete. That got their attention. A man with a receding hairline and a face like a sandblasted brick raised an eyebrow. Miss Harper, you've been relieved of duty pending an internal review. Yeah. But if you reviewed Access Log 201 this morning, you only saw what someone wanted you to see. I slid the printed transcript across the table. Lara had redacted the caller ID and aligned the metadata columns. I had highlighted the log hash from the cold archive, proving it had been preserved before the breach. The older IA agent leaned forward, squinting. Where did you get this? Same place you should have looked, outside the sanitized server logs. He looked at his partner, then back at me. If this is fabricated, it's not. And if you run it against the system checksum, you'll see it was generated exactly 27 hours before the breach from the chief's IP range with his clearance token. For a long second, neither of them moved. Then the younger one asked, "Why bring this to us?" I shrugged. Because the next person I bring it to is the press. That changed the air in the room. One of them stood. Wait here. He left without his coffee. I watched him cross the hallway, knock once on the frosted door to the captain's office, and step inside. He was gone 5 minutes. When he returned, he didn't look at me. He looked tired, and he carried a manila folder with a red stamp across the front. Reclassify. Urgent. Let's take this upstairs, he said quietly. Now. I followed, up 2 flights, past the forensic IT unit, where monitors blinked with security graphs, and into the soundproofed conference suite labeled Secure Case Room 3. Inside waited the district attorney. He didn't offer a chair. He simply tapped the folder. We've already pulled the logs from the chief's office, he said. Your name was meant to distract. Then why didn't you stop it? He looked at me, calm as a glacier. Because sometimes, to see the full pattern, you let the wrong piece move. I stared at him, stunned. You let them throw me to the wolves. No, he said, shaking his head. I let them think they were feeding one. He opened the folder. A new log, labeled Data Leak, Chief, Terminal, 02.11, Reconstructed Path. It was everything, every file accessed, every record pulled, every timestamp, all from his machine. And then the DA said the words I had only dreamed someone in power might whisper. Move the data leak to his file. Suddenly, I wasn't the accused anymore. I was the witness. They moved me to a temporary station with no nameplate, no login, and no window. Just a borrowed chair, a blinking cursor on a forensic terminal, and a sticky note that said, DA access. Use wisely. I sat there for an hour, staring at the cold steel shell of the precinct's backbone, the internal data grid. This wasn't the surface-level database, the glossy front desk version with color-coded tags and HR filters. This was the bone marrow of the system, and I had just been handed the digital equivalent of a scalpel. When I finally typed in the clearance key, it felt like cracking open a vault that wasn't supposed to exist. And there it was, a folder buried inside the mirrored backup directory, time-stamped 1 hour before the breach. Trust Ghost, Dev, Archive, Delta, Ops Brief, Internal Flag. It wasn't labeled, it wasn't linked, but it wasn't empty. The file inside was deceptively simple. One table, rows of names, columns of charges, internal complaints, civilian reports, flagged keywords, misconduct, abuse of power, classified override, evidence suppression, and at the top of the list, highlighted in soft yellow, Chief J. Rothwell, with over 32 flagged events, none of which had ever made it into Access Log 201, none of which were ever reviewed by Internal Affairs, because they had been intercepted, scrubbed, silenced. I leaned back in the chair, throat dry. The system hadn't failed. It had been trained to protect its own. The longer I stared, the more I realized the real leak wasn't about data. It was about silence, about all the people who saw the rot and said nothing. The chief had built himself a castle of clean logs, faked access trails, and digital ghosts, but somewhere in the cold archive, a single line of truth had survived. One of the reports had a note in the margin. Unusual for a system log. A manual entry. If you're reading this, you're either very brave or very dead. Either way, get out of this folder now. I smiled bitterly. Too late. I took screenshots, saved hashes, sent encrypted packages to 3 burner emails I'd set up the night after Bruner screamed at me in front of 12 strangers. One of those inboxes went directly to the City Oversight Committee. The second, to the journalist who'd once leaked the mayor's sealed tax audit. And the third, straight to my mother. She wouldn't understand most of it, but she'd know what to do with a file labeled "If I Disappear." I closed the archive, wiped the temporary logs, and logged out with shaking hands. And just as I stood up, someone knocked on the glass. I turned. It was Captain Bruner, her expression unreadable, her eyes locked on mine through the glass, like a riddle with a badge. She raised one finger, slowly, firmly, upstairs. Now, something had shifted. I followed. The elevator ride to the top floor felt longer than it should have. 3 floors, 30 seconds, yet every tick of the fluorescent light overhead seemed to drag like the final seconds before a verdict. Bruner stood next to me, silent, not angry, not sympathetic, just still, like the quiet before the breach alarm sounds at SO 211. She didn't ask what I knew. She didn't offer reassurance. She didn't apologize. She didn't have to. The walls of the elevator were mirrored steel. I caught a glimpse of myself, creased collar, eyes darker than the day before, mouth pulled tight like a wire about to snap. The reflection didn't look like a rookie anymore. It looked like someone with teeth. When the doors opened, the air changed. The top floor wasn't like the rest of the precinct. No cluttered desks, no ringing phones, no chipped tile. Just glass and silence, soundproof panels, frosted conference rooms, the scent of polished furniture and sealed secrets. She led me to a door I'd only seen once before, from a distance, when Rothwell emerged during a press briefing with that thin smile that said, "Trust me, I've buried worse." Chief's office. The nameplate was still there. The man was not. Instead, Internal Affairs sat at the conference table, flanked by someone I hadn't seen before. A federal observer, judging by the seal on his lapel and the way he didn't blink when I entered. "Sit," said Brunner. I sat. The IA agent from earlier nodded to me. Miss Harper, we've reviewed your submissions, the mirrored log hashes, the email trail, the external backups. He paused. We believe you. The weight of those words didn't hit me immediately, not because I didn't understand them, but because I wasn't sure what they meant in a place like this. Then, what happens now? The man across the table, Federal, spoke for the first time. Now, we move the data leak to his file. He tapped the screen embedded in the tabletop, bringing up access log 201, but it was no longer mine. It showed a reconstructed timeline, login from Rothwell's terminal, external VPN, whitelisted, time-stamped 02.11, access privileges matching a clearance level above mine. The same access trail I'd seen on the drive from Sam, but now backed by Federal checksum verification. Why would the chief risk it? I asked. He didn't, the Federal replied. Someone gave him reason to. That's what we're following next. And me? Brunner leaned forward, eyes fixed on mine. You walk out of here, quietly, no press, no desk for now, just distance. You're burying this? We're protecting you. My hands curled into fists on my lap. I didn't survive this to be erased. No, Brunner said, her voice low. You survived this so someone else won't have to. The Federal slid a sealed envelope across the table. There's a phone number inside. It doesn't exist on any official registry. Use it if someone starts asking the wrong questions. I stared at it. Then I stood, because the room suddenly felt colder. Outside, the city was waking up. Emails going out, printers humming, someone pouring cheap coffee into a chipped mug that said "World's Best Cop," and trying not to think about what happened to the last person who sat in my chair. I stepped into the hallway, and I knew I wasn't just walking away from the chief's office. I was walking out of the story they wrote for me. The city didn't look different, but I did. I walked 10 blocks without checking my phone. Not because I didn't want to, because I didn't dare. In this part of the story, the threat wasn't in the logs anymore. It was in the silence between the messages I didn't get, in the co-workers who didn't look up when I passed them, in the access log 201 file that now lived under someone else's name, but still haunted mine. I ended up at the water because I always did when the noise got too loud. Concrete steps led down to a thin strip of gravel and fog, the kind of place the precinct PR team would have photoshopped out of a recruitment brochure. I sat on the steps and breathed in air that tasted like rust and wet paper. I opened the envelope. Inside, a blank white business card and a number written in what looked like typewriter font. No name, no agency, no signal. I stared at it until the number stopped making sense. It wasn't just a line for emergencies. It was a reminder that someone still thought I was valuable, dangerous, or both. I flicked the card against my thumb until my phone buzzed. Unknown number. You did good. No sender, no voice, just text, like a pat on the head from someone who'd already moved on. I deleted it because I wasn't anyone's puppet, not anymore. A few hours later, I walked back into the precinct, not the admin entrance, not the side hallway, but straight through the front lobby, past the security desk, past the badged officers, into the records division. Lara looked up, startled. You're not supposed to. I'm not here for work, I said. I'm here to check something. Her eyes scanned me for a beat, then softened. She slid her chair back and gestured. Computer 3's open. You didn't see me. I sat down and logged in using guest access. Public, but enough. The files I'd sent were gone, wiped from the queue, not archived, not stored, not traceable. But something new had appeared in the system logs. An edit to my personnel file. I clicked. There it was. Status cleared. Comments, no further action required. Notes, system correction, data breach attribution revised. Just 3 lines, cold, clean, clinical, like I'd never been blamed, like it never happened. But it had. I leaned back in the plastic chair and laughed under my breath. They'd erased the scar, but not the pain, and somewhere in that building, I knew Rothwell's name was no longer on the doors. Someone else had inherited his mess, his passwords, his shadows, but not his secrets. Those were mine now. I got up and walked back out the way I came in. Head high, badge or no badge, this city still had rot in the walls. But at least now, the system knew my name. The next morning, the city paper ran a piece so dry it could have been typed with sand. Chief resigns amid routine audit review. No misconduct confirmed. 12 words, 1 stock photo, no mention of the breach, no mention of access log 201, no mention of me. But between the lines, if you knew where to look, you could almost see the outline of the truth. The DA's office didn't want a public scandal. They wanted a scalpel, not a grenade. So they made him vanish quietly. Meanwhile, I became an asterisk, a resolved case, sealed and buried under digital layers of bureaucracy no civilian would ever dig through. But it wasn't over, because someone still wanted to know what I knew. I saw it in the way my building's buzzer rang twice at 3 a.m., but no one was there. I felt it when my emails started timing out randomly, like someone upstream was checking the headers before they hit my inbox. And then there was the envelope. No name, no return address. Just a USB stick inside and a sticky note with 4 words. He wasn't acting alone. I stared at it on my coffee table for an hour before touching it. Then I booted up an old laptop I hadn't used since the academy. Air-gapped, disconnected, no cloud sync. The kind of machine you only use when you don't want anyone to know you're using it. The USB lit up red when I inserted it. Inside, 1 folder. Access log 201B chained. A deeper version of the log I'd nearly been destroyed by, except this one was encrypted twice and had a readme.txt with a phrase I hadn't seen before. Chain of custody, internal relay revisions, ghost.nexus fork. Whoever had sent this, they weren't police. They weren't IA. They weren't even on the official grid. This was someone on the outside who had been watching the inside. And they knew the breach wasn't just a rogue chief with a god complex. They knew it was systemic. Every log entry, every packet trace, every redirect, this chain reconstructed 4 separate internal handoffs, starting days before my login had been framed. The source of the leak hadn't started at Oro 211. It had been building, layered, stacked, by people who knew how to clean up after themselves. Until someone, probably the same someone who dropped that USB, intercepted the trail. I traced one of the IP addresses through the breadcrumbs. It led to a ghost shell account, one of those admin users that's technically deactivated, but never removed. The kind IT forgets to clean up or chooses not to. The account name? kaosis.brun, admin, back. I stared at it until my jaw locked. Brunner. There was no way, except the access token didn't lie. She'd been there, not during the breach, but weeks before. She'd pulled the same files, the same reports, from the same subnet. But her logs had been flagged as maintenance requests, routine audits, clever, legal, invisible. And suddenly the memory of her eyes, flat, unreadable when I stood in the chief's office, clicked into focus. She'd known everything. She'd known before I did, and she'd let it happen. Let me burn. Let him fall. Let the DA circle like a shark with clean hands. She hadn't just survived the breach. She'd architected the aftermath. Brunner's office was locked, but I still knew how to get in. Some habits from academy training never leave you, especially the ones you're not supposed to practice. I waited until the hallway emptied for shift change, 3:47 p.m. precisely, and used the moment to slip in behind a janitor pushing a squeaky cart of printer paper and bitter lemon disinfectant. The door clicked closed behind me with a soft finality. Her space was spotless. No mugs, no open files, not even a stray post-it. Just one framed commendation on the wall and a closed laptop angled perfectly square on the glass desk. It looked more like a prop than a workstation, but there was always something. I checked under the desk, inside the cabinet drawers, all locked, no surprise there. What I didn't expect was the old ThinkPad sitting on the side table, not connected to any network, no fingerprint scanner, no stickers, just matte black plastic, dulled from years of use. I pressed the power button. It booted, no password prompt, just a plain desktop with one folder. Just ghost, trace, just exit, toss nodes. Inside, more logs, encrypted, time-stamped. I didn't open them, not yet. Instead, I looked at the text file nestled beside them. Internal Affairs, Rec Redirect TXT. The header was blank, but the body said enough. District Attorney authorized controlled burn on Rothwell chain. Authorization initiated by Command Brunner. Operative used J. Harper, unaware. Outcome, clean. I stared at the screen. My name. Unaware. Not an officer, not a whistleblower. An operative, used like a crowbar to pry open the mess Brunner couldn't reach herself. All this time, I thought I was chasing the breach, stopping the rot, trying to claw my way out of a trap built for someone else. But I was the trap, and she'd pulled the lever. I sat there for a long time, letting the truth soak through my skin like cold rain. It explained everything. Why the DA waited, why IA watched silently, why Brunner had never once defended me, but also never let me fall completely, like someone keeping a chess piece alive just long enough to block the check. She'd orchestrated it with the precision of someone who understood the stakes, not just politically, but structurally. If Rothwell went down too early, his friends would scatter. If he went down too late, the logs would be scrubbed clean. She needed just the right moment, and I was her timestamp. 7:11, I closed the laptop and stood. There was no anger in my hands now, no shaking, no rage, just clarity. She hadn't betrayed me. Not in her eyes. She'd used me to clean a system that would never allow her to do it any other way. And in her world, maybe that was loyalty. Maybe it was mercy. Maybe that's what justice looks like when all the pretty words fail. But as I stepped out of her office and back into the fluorescent maze of the precinct, one thing settled like iron in my lungs. They'd chosen silence. I wouldn't. The next time I saw Brunner, it was raining. Thin, sideways rain that made the precinct windows look like warped glass. The kind of weather that kept witnesses home and cameras blurry. She stood at the back of the evidence archive, gloves on, flipping through tagged envelopes like she was choosing tea. I didn't speak. She knew I was there. "You shouldn't be down here," she said without turning. "You shouldn't have picked me," I replied. She paused, just for a breath. Then, "You were the only one who wouldn't break too soon." There it was, confirmation, no denials, no rehearsed lines, just brutal honesty in a room full of locked cabinets and old fingerprints. "You weaponized me," I said. Brunner finally looked up. Her eyes weren't cold anymore, just tired, like the kind of tired that seeps into your bones after 30 years of watching the system clean up after itself. "No," she said. "I freed you. You just haven't figured out how yet." I stepped closer. "This isn't justice, it's performance. You burned Rothwell with a whisper and buried the rest with me." She slid a folder back into the drawer and pulled off her gloves slowly, methodically. "I did what the badge wouldn't, what the courts wouldn't, what internal affairs couldn't without cover." "You used me," I repeated. "And I saved you," she said calmly. "You're still standing. He's not." I stared at her, trying to find the villain in her face, but there was nothing cartoonish about Brunner. No evil smirk, no power-hungry glint. Just a woman who learned too late that rules don't fix rot. Only precision does. "You could have told me," I whispered. "And what would you have done?" she asked. "Filed a report? Walked into his office with your noble heart and righteous indignation? You'd be bleeding in a gutter." She wasn't wrong, and somehow that made it worse, because I wasn't angry anymore. I was cracked, splintered down the middle, still holding my badge in my pocket like it meant something, still wanting to believe the system I joined was salvageable. But Brunner? She'd let go of that illusion a long time ago. Outside, thunder rolled. She stepped past me, brushing my shoulder. "At some point," she said, voice low, "you'll see it wasn't betrayal. It was evolution." And then she left. I stood there alone in a room full of archived crimes, sealed, indexed, forgotten. And I knew then. The breach wasn't just digital, it was moral. It wasn't about one chief. It was about the firewall we all pretend exists between what we should do and what we must. And someone had quietly decided to rewrite the access permissions. Weeks passed, the precinct kept moving. Cases came and went. New names filled the hallway chatter, fresh uniforms shuffled through the locker room, and the latest internal memo was about toner conservation. No one mentioned Rothwell. No one mentioned the Oro 211 breach. No one mentioned me. But sometimes silence is louder than a headline. Brunner was still in her office, still signing forms, still commanding a building that had almost cannibalized itself. But now she looked through people, like she was scanning for another breach, this time emotional, not digital. She hadn't changed. I had. I didn't go back to my desk. I didn't reclaim my badge. I didn't request a hearing. Instead, I visited the server room on my own time, sat beside the humming racks, and watched the heartbeat of the precinct blink in LED blue. The logs still ran. The archive still expanded, and buried beneath petabytes of sanitized routines was everything no one wanted to see. The digital ghosts of men like Rothwell never truly left. They hovered in backup logs, pinged through audit trails, whispered across forgotten ports. And I knew if I really wanted to, I could find more. But I didn't, because I'd finally understood the cost. Truth wasn't the sword people romanticized it to be. It was a slow bleed, one that doesn't kill the villain. It just stains you enough to be mistaken for one. I turned in my key card on a Monday morning without ceremony, left it in a padded envelope at the front desk with nothing inside but a final printout. No message, no signature, just a highlighted entry from Access Log 201, 02.11, remote session terminated. The receptionist didn't ask. He just nodded and slid the envelope into a drawer marked unassigned. I walked out into the gray light of a city that didn't care whether you were right, only whether you were still useful. No ceremony, no vindication, no badge, just the knowledge that somewhere, far beneath the polished floors and coffee breath of daily routine, the system still remembered who logged in and who didn't log out.